Zethkar stood at the window for a long moment, watching the stars through the reinforced glass. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer somehow, despite the mechanical translation. The end came faster than anyone expected. He said Admiral Kane launched what your military called Operation Lazarus. By then, human engineers had captured enough hegemony technology to upgrade their remaining ships. Maria checked her recording device. What kind of upgrades? Energy shields, plasma weapons, faster engines. Your people learned our technology in months when it had taken us centuries to develop, but they did not use these improvements the way we expected. The alien commander turned back toward the humans. Instead of building a fleet to fight us in space, Admiral Kane did something that no military strategist in the galaxy had ever considered. She evacuated the entire human population. Peter looked up from his datapad. Evacuated them where? Everywhere, Zethkar replied. Hidden bases on asteroids, underground facilities on your outer moons, space stations built inside hollow rocks. In 6 months, every human civilian had been moved off Earth and scattered throughout your solar system. The alien commander sat down, his chair creaking under his weight. Then Kane sent the Hegemony Council a message that ended the war. She appeared on our screens, standing in what looked like an empty command center. Behind her, we could see Earth through a large window, beautiful blue and green, just as our scouts had described. Zethkar's mandibles clicked slowly. Kane said, "Members of the Hegemony Council, you have spent 8 months trying to conquer our world. You have lost thousands of ships and tens of thousands of soldiers. You have learned that humans do not surrender, do not retreat, and do not negotiate when our children's future is at stake." Maria leaned forward. What was her offer? Kane continued, "Today I am giving you a choice. You can have Earth, right now, complete and total control of our homeworld, with no further resistance from human military forces. All you have to do is land your troops and claim it." The alien commander's eyes seemed to glow in the harsh light. But then Kane smiled. It was not a friendly smile, she said. "However, there are a few things you should know before you accept our generous offer." Peter stopped typing. "What things?" Kane explained that every major city on Earth had been rigged with fusion charges. Every military installation was booby. Every factory, every power plant, every piece of infrastructure that might be useful to an occupying force had been wired to explode. Zethkar's translator made a grinding sound. She said, "The planet you conquer will be a radioactive wasteland. Every breath of air will be poisoned. Every drop of water will be contaminated. Every piece of food will be toxic. You can have Earth, but you will inherit a dead world that will kill anyone who tries to live on it." The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of machinery. But Kane was not finished. Zethkar continued. She said, "And even if you are willing to accept a poisoned planet, you should know that every human in this system will spend the rest of their lives making your occupation as expensive as possible." Maria felt her throat tighten. What did she mean? Kane explained that the scattered human population would continue fighting for generations. Asteroid bases would launch surprise attacks. Moon colonies would send sabotage teams. Space stations would serve as staging areas for endless guerrilla campaigns. The alien commander's voice grew quieter. She said, "You will never be safe on our world. Every day will bring new attacks. Every night will bring new sabotage. Every year will cost you more soldiers, more ships, more resources. You can conquer Earth, but you will never be able to keep it." Zethkar stood and walked to the opposite wall. Then Kane delivered her final message. She said, "So here is your choice, gentlemen. You can have a dead planet that will bankrupt your empire trying to hold it, or you can leave our system and never return. We will not pursue you. We will not seek revenge. We will simply remember that you chose to be reasonable when reason was offered." Peter picked up his datapad again. How did the Hegemony Council respond? They voted to withdraw within hours, Sethkar replied. For the first time in our species' history, the hegemony retreated from a conquest, not because we could not win, but because winning would destroy us. The alien commander returned to his seat. The evacuation began immediately. Every hegemony ship left human space within 2 weeks. I was released as part of the armistice negotiations, along with all other prisoners. Maria adjusted her glasses. But you said you learned something remarkable about humans. What was it? Sethkar's mandibles spread in what might have been a smile. 3 years after the war ended, human merchant ships began appearing in hegemony space. Not as conquerors, not as enemies seeking revenge, as traders offering partnerships and cultural exchange. The alien commanders for eyes focused on both humans. The same species that had fought us to a standstill was now offering friendship. Admiral Kane herself commanded the first trade mission. She brought gifts for the Hegemony Council, samples of human art, music, literature, technology that could benefit both our species. Peter looked confused. Why would they do that after everything that happened? I asked Kane the same question when she visited this station last year, Sethkar replied. She said something that I will never forget. The alien commander's voice became very quiet. Kane said, "Commander, we never wanted to fight you. We fought because you gave us no choice. But now the fighting is over. Now we can choose to be friends instead of enemies. Now we can choose to build something better together." Maria wiped her eyes. What did you say? I asked her how humans could forgive us after everything we had done, after all the death and destruction, after 8 months of war. Sethkar's translator hummed softly. Kane smiled and said, "Forgiveness is not about forgetting the past. It's about choosing the future. We can spend forever hating each other for what happened yesterday, or we can spend forever building something beautiful for tomorrow. Which choice makes our children's lives better?" The alien commander looked directly at both journalists. That is when I understood the most remarkable thing about humans. You do not just fight harder than any species in the galaxy. You also forgive more completely than any species in the galaxy. You can be the most terrifying enemies and the most generous friends, sometimes within the same generation. Peter set down his datapad. Is that why you finally agreed to this interview? Yes, Sethkar said simply. Because my people need to understand what we truly encountered. Humans are not monsters, though they fight like demons when threatened. They are not weak, though they value mercy. They are not invincible, though they proved unconquerable. The alien commander stood for the last time. They are something we had never encountered before. A species that treats survival not as an individual instinct, but as a collective responsibility. They taught us that there are fates worse than death, and prices too high to pay even for victory. Sethkar walked to the door, then turned back toward Maria and Peter. Any species that chooses to make war on humanity should understand this. You are not fighting soldiers, or ships, or weapons. You are fighting the combined will of an entire civilization that has decided you are a threat to their children's future. And there is no force in the universe more dangerous than that. The alien commander paused at the doorway. But if you choose friendship instead of conquest, you will discover that same fierce love turned toward building something beautiful instead of destroying something precious. And there is no force in the universe more wonderful than that either. Door closed behind him with a soft hiss, leaving Maria and Peter alone with their recording device and a story that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever. Sethkar's claws scraped against the metal table as he gripped its edges. The sound made both humans wince, but his 4 eyes remained distant, lost in memory. "Colonel Dan Murphy found me 3 days after the canyon battle," he said. "I was hiding in what you call a cave system, badly wounded and separated from my unit. My communication equipment was destroyed. My plasma rifle was empty. I expected to die alone in the dark." Maria adjusted her recorder to make sure it was still working. What happened when Murphy's soldiers found you? They should have killed me immediately, Zethkar replied. By every rule of warfare I knew, wounded enemies were either executed or left to die. That is how the hegemony had always operated. That is how every species we conquered had operated. The alien commander's translator hummed as he paused. Instead, Murphy's soldiers gave me water. They treated my wounds with their own medical supplies. They carried me to their base on a stretcher made from human clothing and tree branches. Peter looked up from his datapad. Why would they help an enemy? I asked the same question, Zethkar said. Murphy told me that wounded prisoners receive medical care according to something called the Geneva Convention. Human rules for how wars should be fought. I had never heard of such a thing. The alien commander stood and walked to the window again, his reflection staring back at him. The human medical facility was unlike anything I had seen. Dr. Kate Williams treated my injuries with the same care she gave to wounded human soldiers. She worked for hours repairing damage to my exoskeleton. She gave me pain medication when I asked for it. She even brought me food that would not harm my digestive system. Maria frowned. That must have been confusing for you. Confusing is too small a word, Zethkar replied. In hegemony culture, enemies exist to be destroyed or enslaved. The idea of helping someone who had been trying to kill you made no sense. I thought it was some kind of psychological torture technique. The alien commander turned back toward the humans, but it was not torture. The humans genuinely wanted to keep me alive and healthy. Children from the nearby settlement would leave drawings outside my cell. Pictures of stick figures holding hands. Under yellow suns. Flowers made from colored paper. Small toys carved from wood. Peter stopped typing. Children were giving gifts to an alien invader. Yes, Zethkar said simply. Dr. Williams explained that the children had been told I was hurt and far from home. They wanted to help me feel better. They did not see an enemy. They saw someone who needed kindness. The alien commander sat back down, his movements slower now. After 2 weeks in the medical facility, Colonel Murphy came to visit me. He brought photographs from his wallet, pictures of his wife Nancy working in their garden, his daughters playing on something called a swing set, his elderly parents sitting on what you call a front porch. Zethkar's mandibles clicked softly. Murphy asked me if I had a family. I told him about my mate and our 3 offspring back on the hegemony homeworld. I expected him to threaten them or use them as leverage for information. Maria leaned forward. What did he do instead? He showed me more photographs, hundreds of them. Human families from his unit, parents teaching children to ride bicycles, wedding ceremonies in flower-covered gardens, birthday parties with colored balloons and sweet cakes. The alien commander's voice grew quieter. Then Murphy asked me a question that changed everything I thought I knew about warfare. He asked, Commander, why do you think we fight so hard? Peter set down his datapad. What did you tell him? I gave him the standard military answer. Species fight for territory, resources, strategic advantage, survival. Murphy listened carefully, then shook his head. Zethkar's 4 eyes focused on different points as he remembered. Murphy said, You see our willingness to die as weakness or madness. But we don't fight because we want to die. We fight because we have something worth living for. Every human who dies today does it so that other humans can have a tomorrow. The alien commander's translator made a grinding sound as he continued. Murphy showed me a picture of his youngest daughter on her first day of school. She was wearing a bright yellow dress and carrying a backpack covered with pictures of cartoon animals. She was smiling and missing 2 front teeth. Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. What did he say about the picture? Murphy said. This is Emily. She's 6 years old. She likes to paint pictures and catch fireflies in glass jars. She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up so she can help sick animals. She has never hurt anyone in her entire life. Sethkar paused to adjust his translator. Then Murphy looked directly at me and said, "You're not just conquering territory or resources, Commander. You're trying to erase everything that makes us human. Our children, our families, our way of life. Emily will never get to be a veterinarian if your people win this war. She'll never catch another firefly or paint another picture. She'll never grow up at all." The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of life support systems. Murphy continued, "Every human in this system is fighting to protect their version of this photograph, their Emily, their future, their hope. You think we're crazy for dying in battle, but from our perspective, surrender means something worse than death. It means the end of everything we love." Peter wiped his eyes. "How did you respond?" "I could not respond," Sethkar said. "For the first time in my life, I understood that we were not fighting soldiers or ships or weapons. We were fighting an entire civilization that had decided we were a threat to their children's future." The alien commander's mandibles spread wider. "Murphy explained that humans don't see war as a contest between armies. They see it as a choice between preserving their way of life or watching it disappear forever. In that context, their suicidal tactics were not crazy. They were the only rational response to an existential threat." Maria leaned back in her chair. "Did this change how you viewed the war?" "It changed how I viewed everything," Sethkar replied. "I realized that every human who had died fighting my forces was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's friend. They were not faceless enemies. They were people with names and dreams and families who loved them." The alien commander walked to the opposite wall and pressed his palm against it. "Captain Hayes, who died in the canyon ambush, had a newborn son named Tommy. Captain Mitchell, who collapsed the mine shaft, was supposed to get married after the war ended. Jake Morrison, the mining ship pilot, had been saving money to buy his daughter a horse for her birthday." Sethkar turned back toward the humans. These were not professional soldiers trained for combat. They were ordinary people who chose to die rather than let their children grow up as slaves in a hegemony-controlled galaxy. Peter picked up his datapad again. "How long were you held prisoner?" 6 months, Sethkar said. 6 months of learning about human culture, human values, human dreams. Dr. Williams taught me your language so I could speak without the translator. Children brought me books with pictures of your history. Colonel Murphy shared meals with me and answered every question. I asked about your society." The alien commander sat down one final time. "By the time the war ended, I understood why humans fought the way they did, and I understood why the hegemony could never truly defeat them." Maria adjusted her glasses. "What do you mean?" "You cannot conquer a species that refuses to be conquered," Sethkar said. "You cannot break people who would rather die than submit. You cannot defeat an enemy that turns every loss into a victory by making conquest cost more than it's worth." The alien commander looked at both journalists with all 4 eyes. "The hegemony learned that some victories are indistinguishable from defeats, and some species cannot be conquered because the price of victory exceeds any possible benefit." Peter glanced at Maria, then back at Sethkar. "What happened when the armistice was signed?" "That," Sethkar said quietly, "is when I learned the most remarkable thing about humans of all." Sethkar rubbed his scarred mandibles with one clawed hand. The gesture seemed almost human-like to Maria and Peter, though they couldn't tell if it was learned behavior or coincidence. "The ground invasion began on March 20th, he said. "I commanded the 7th Assault Division, 2,000 of our best warriors, equipped with plasma rifles and energy shields that had never failed us in 47 previous conquests." He gestured to the deep scars on his exoskeleton. "I received these wounds in what you humans call Colorado, mountain terrain that our sensors said would be easy to control. We expected scattered resistance from your military forces, then quick surrender once civilians realized we could not be stopped." Peter looked up from his datapad. "But that's not what happened." "No," Sethkar replied. The first 3 days went according to plan. We established landing zones without serious opposition. Human military units retreated instead of fighting, pitched battles. Our intelligence officers reported that enemy forces were regrouping in defensive positions around major cities. The alien commander walked to the wall and pressed his palm against the metal surface. His claws left tiny scratches in the paint. We thought we understood human tactics. Fall back, fortify strong positions, force attackers to take heavy casualties, then negotiate from a position of strength. Standard military doctrine for a weaker force facing invasion. Maria shifted in her seat. "What changed your mind?" "Captain Ben Hayes," Sethkar said immediately, "leader of what your military called the 10th Mountain Rangers. On our 4th night on your planet, his unit hit our forward observation post. The alien commander's 4 eyes focused on different points in the room as he remembered. We had placed the post on high ground with excellent visibility in all directions. Motion sensors, thermal imaging, automated defense systems. 24 of our soldiers, with orders to watch for enemy movement and report back to command." Sethkar turned back toward the humans. "Hayes and 12 of your soldiers approached through a ravine that our sensors said was impossible to climb. They moved during a thunderstorm when rain blocked our thermal systems. They used chemical explosives with timers instead of energy weapons that would show up on our detectors." Peter was typing rapidly. "What kind of explosives?" "Crude devices. Made from mining supplies and farm chemicals," Sethkar replied. "Primitive technology that we had stopped watching for because no advanced species used such methods. But they worked. The entire observation post was destroyed. All 24 of my soldiers died without firing a shot." The alien commander sat back down, his chair groaning under his weight. But Hayes did not stop there. His unit left behind dozens of small explosive devices hidden throughout our landing zone. Bombs disguised as rocks, mines buried under dirt paths, booby traps attached to equipment we might want to examine. Maria frowned. "That seems like standard guerrilla warfare tactics." "Standard, yes, but not the way Hayes used them. Most species plant mines to control territory or deny access to strategic locations. Hayes planted them to create fear. Every step our soldiers took could be their last. Every object they touched might explode. Every shadow might hide an enemy who would kill them and vanish before help could arrive." Sethkar's translator made a harsh grinding sound. "Within a week, my warriors were afraid to leave their fortified positions. These were soldiers who had fought acid-spitting monsters on Kepler Prime, veterans who had stormed energy-shielded cities on Vega 7, but they were terrified of human farmers with homemade bombs." The alien commander looked directly at both humans. "Your Captain Hayes sent us a message on our 10th day on Earth. A simple radio transmission on military frequencies. He said, 'Commander Sethkar, welcome to the Rocky Mountains. Every step you take from now on will be on ground that belongs to us. Every breath you draw will be air we choose to let you breathe. Every sunrise you see will be one we permit you to witness. You are not conquerors here. You are guests. And guests who overstay their welcome tend to have accidents.'" Peter stopped typing. "Did you respond?" "I tried to," Sethkar said. "I ordered a full battalion to hunt down Hayes and his unit. 400 soldiers with air support and heavy weapons. They should have been able to destroy any human force in the area." The alien commander's mandibles clicked slowly. "Hayes led them into what you call a box canyon. Narrow entrance, steep walls. No way out except the way they came in. Perfect place for an ambush. My soldiers knew it was a trap, but they had orders to pursue." Maria leaned forward. "What happened?" Hayes had spent weeks preparing that canyon. Every rock face was rigged with explosives. Every possible defensive position had been booby-trapped. When my battalion entered the canyon, they found Hayes and his 12 soldiers waiting for them, in the center. Sethkar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 400 against 13. The humans should have surrendered immediately. Instead, Hayes stood up on a boulder where everyone could see him and spoke through a loudspeaker. "What did he say?" Peter asked. "He said, 'Boys, looks like we're outnumbered about 30 to 1. Anyone want to leave?' None of his soldiers moved. Then Hayes looked directly at my battalion commander and said, 'Colonel, you brought a lot of good soldiers into my mountains today. I'm going to make sure none of them leave.'" The room fell silent, except for the quiet hum of machinery. "Hayes detonated the entire canyon," Zethkar continued. "Thousands of pounds of explosives hidden in the rock walls. The blast killed all 13 humans instantly. It also killed 378 of my soldiers and destroyed 6 armored vehicles." Maria felt her throat tighten. The survivors, 22 soldiers, escaped the canyon. But Hayes had left them one final gift: more explosive devices along the only exit route. By the time the survivors reached safety, only 8 remained alive. 8 soldiers out of 400. Zethkar stood up and walked back to the window. "That night, I received reports from other division commanders across your continent. Similar attacks. Human units fighting to the death in battles they could not win. Soldiers who booby-trapped their own fallen comrades. Officers who detonated ammunition supplies rather than let us capture them." The alien commander turned back toward his audience. "Captain Sarah Mitchell fought a running battle for 6 days through what you call the Appalachian Mountains. When her ammunition ran out, she led my soldiers into an abandoned mine shaft and collapsed it with chemical explosives. 43 humans died. 112 of my warriors were buried alive." Peter looked up from his notes. "How did this affect your troops?" "They began to break," Zethkar said simply. "Not their bodies, their minds. My soldiers started having nightmares about humans who appeared from nowhere, killed without warning, and disappeared like ghosts. They stopped eating food found on your planet in case it was poisoned. They refused to enter any human building in case it was rigged to explode." The alien commander sat down heavily. "But the worst part was not the fear. The worst part was the realization that humans were not fighting to win battles. They were fighting to make occupation impossible. Every victory we achieved came at a cost that made the victory worthless." Maria wiped her eyes. "How long did the ground war continue?" 3 months, Zethkar replied. 3 months of watching brave soldiers die for pieces of ground that were not worth holding. 3 months of fighting an enemy who treated their own deaths as victories as long as they took us with them. The alien commander's four eyes seemed to glow in the harsh light. By the end, my division was reduced to 400 effective soldiers. We controlled exactly the ground we stood on, and nothing more. Every inch beyond our perimeter belonged to humans who would kill us if we tried to take it. Zethkar looked at both journalists. "That was when I was captured during Captain Murphy's counterattack. And that was when I learned the most terrifying thing about your species." Peter leaned forward. "What was that?" "That everything we had experienced so far was just the beginning." Zethkar's four eyes remained fixed on the recording device as he continued his story. The memory seemed to drain color from his already pale exoskeleton. "The first human ship to reach our formation was a converted mining vessel called Liberty's Edge," he said. "Our sensors showed it was ancient by human standards. Built for hauling, or not for war. The hull was barely thick enough to protect against space debris." Peter looked up from his data pad. "What kind of weapons did it carry?" "None," Zethkar replied. "No plasma cannons, no missile launchers, no energy shields, just mining charges, and a nuclear fusion drive that was older than most of our junior officers." Maria frowned. "Then how could it threaten your fleet?" The clicking sound came from Zethkar's throat again. This time it lasted longer, like broken machinery trying to start. "We asked the same question. Admiral Vexton ordered 3 cruisers to intercept. The Devourer of Worlds, the Star Crusher, and the Death's Shadow. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city. Each one had won dozens of battles against proper warships. He paused to adjust his translator device. The silver box was scarred and dented, clearly damaged in combat. The human pilot was named Jake Morrison. We learned this later from your military records. He had 2 children and a wife named Carol. He worked in the asteroid mines for 15 years before the war started, just a civilian who signed up to defend his home. Peter stopped typing. What happened when your ships intercepted him? They opened fire immediately. Standard tactics. Concentrated plasma bursts designed to destroy the target quickly and move on to the next one. Morrison's ship began taking hits within seconds. The hull started melting. The engines took damage. Any rational pilot would have ejected or changed course. Zethkar's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Morrison did neither. He increased power to his engines. Full burn, straight toward our formation. The mining ship was coming apart around him, but he kept flying directly at us. Maria leaned forward. Did he return fire? He had nothing to return fire with, Zethkar said, but that was not his plan. Morrison flew his dying ship directly between the 3 cruisers and detonated. His entire fuel supply. The nuclear explosion took out Devourer of Worlds completely. Starcrusher lost half her hull. Death's Shadow was crippled and had to withdraw from the battle. The room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the air system. Both humans stared at the alien commander with wide eyes. 1 mining ship with no weapons destroyed or damaged 3 of our best cruisers, Zethkar continued. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was Morrison's final transmission. What did he say? Peter asked quietly. He was singing, Zethkar replied, a human song about his home. Something called Country Roads. He sang it while his ship burned around him. He sang it while he flew into our guns. He sang it right up until the moment he died. Maria felt her hands trembling. Why would he do that? We asked ourselves the same question, but there was no time to think about it because more human ships were approaching. Dozens of them, all following the same pattern. No weapons, no armor, no shields, just fusion drives and the will to die. Zethkar's translator made a grinding noise as he spoke faster. A cargo hauler called New Hope came next. Pilot named Betty Johnson. She had converted her ship's cargo bay into a giant bomb using industrial explosives. She took out 2 of our destroyers. Then came a passenger liner called Dreams of Tomorrow. Captain Rick Barnes had evacuated all civilians and packed the ship with nuclear waste from your power plants. The radiation killed everyone on board before he reached our lines, but he kept the ship on course using automated systems. Peter was typing frantically now, trying to keep up. How many ships did humanity send against you? All of them, Zeth said simply. Every vessel in your system that could carry a human crew. Mining ships, cargo haulers, pleasure craft, research vessels, even small personal shuttles with single pilots. All of them flying directly at the most powerful fleet in hegemony history. The alien commander stood up from his chair and walked to the small window that looked out into space. His reflection stared back at him from the reinforced glass. Admiral Kane broadcast a message after the 5th successful suicide run. She appeared on our screens looking calm, almost friendly. She could have been inviting us to a social gathering, instead of promising our deaths. What did she say? Maria asked. Zethkar turned back toward him, his 4 eyes catching the light differently now. She said, Gentlemen, you seem surprised by our tactics. Let me explain something about humans. We are not trying to win a traditional battle. We are trying to make conquest so expensive that even victors become losers. That mining ship you just watched explode cost us 50,000 credits to build. Those 3 cruisers it destroyed cost your empire 50 million credits each. We have 1,000 more ships just like it, and every human in this system willing to crew them. Your move. Peter looked up from his datapad. How did your admiral respond? Admiral Vexton stopped laughing. Zethkar said. For the first time in the battle, he ordered the fleet to fall back and reassess. But it was too late. The human ships kept coming. Wave after wave of volunteers who knew they would not survive. The alien commander returned to his seat, moving more slowly now. A shuttle pilot named Gary Chen flew straight into our flagship's shield generators. A research vessel captain called Ellen Rodriguez detonated her ship's experimental fusion reactor in the middle of our supply formation. An old man named Frank Williams took a pleasure yacht loaded with mining charges and rammed it into our command carrier. Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly. Each death cost us more than we could afford to lose. But the humans kept coming. They turned their entire civilization into a weapon aimed directly at our hearts. We realized we were not fighting an army or a navy. We were fighting an entire species that had decided we were a threat to their children's future. Maria wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What happened to your fleet? We broke, Zethkar said quietly. Not our ships, not our weapons. Us, the crew. For the first time in hegemony history, warriors began refusing orders. Pilots started asking why they should die for conquest when the enemy was willing to die just to stop us. Soldiers questioned whether any planet was worth fighting people who fought like that. The alien commander looked at both humans with all four eyes. By the end of that first day, we had lost 30 ships to human suicide attacks. But we had lost something much more important. We had lost our certainty. We had lost our belief that conquest was inevitable. We had learned that some species cannot be conquered because they refuse to be conquered. Peter set down his datapad. But the war continued. Yes, Zethkar said. Admiral Vexton decided to bypass the space battle and take your homeworld. Directly, ground forces would be deployed to capture strategic locations. Surely humans would be more reasonable when fighting for their actual homes, instead of empty space. The clicking sound came from his throat one more time, but now it sounded less like broken machinery and more like bitter laughter. We were wrong about that too. The metal chair groaned under Commander Zethkar's weight as he shifted in the sterile white room. His four black eyes stared at the recording device sitting on the table between him and the two human journalists. 3 years had passed since the war ended. 3 years of silence. 3 years of refusing every interview request that came to his prison cell on Kepler 7 station. Today was different. The female reporter, Maria Santos, adjusted her glasses and looked at him with careful eyes. Next to her sat the male journalist, Peter Cole, his fingers ready over his datapad. They had been trying to get this interview for months. Now that Zethkar had finally agreed, they seemed almost afraid to begin. Commander, Maria said slowly, thank you for agreeing to speak with us today. Our readers across the galaxy want to understand what happened during the human war. From your perspective, Zethkar's mandibles clicked once. The sound made both humans flinch slightly. His translator device, a small silver box attached to his throat, hummed to life. You want to know about the war, he said, his mechanical voice flat and emotionless. You want to know why the mighty hegemony retreated from a single star system. Why we stopped our expansion for the first time in 1,000 cycles. Peter leaned forward. Yes, sir. The official reports from the Hegemony Council are limited. They only say the conquest was deemed too costly to continue. A sound came from Zethkar's throat that the translator couldn't process. It might have been laughter, but there was no humor in it. Too costly, he repeated. Yes, that is what they wrote in their reports. Clean words for something that was not clean at all. Maria glanced at Peter, then back at the alien commander. Can you start from the beginning? When did the hegemony first learn about humans? Zethkar's scarred exoskeleton caught the harsh light as he leaned back in his chair. The wounds on his shell told a story of violence that neither human could fully understand. Burns from energy weapons, deep gouges from projectile impacts, acid scars from chemical explosives. The beginning, he said. Yes. It started with a routine survey mission. Scout ship Talon of Victory detected radio signals coming from your star system. Primitive broadcasts, television shows, music, the kind of noise that young species make before they learn that the galaxy is listening. He paused, his 4 eyes focusing on different points in the room, as if seeing something that wasn't there. The survey team classified humans as Level 2 civilization, single planet, chemical rockets for space travel, nuclear weapons, but only fission-based, no energy shields, no plasma technology. Your ships were metal boxes held together with primitive welding techniques. Peter was typing rapidly on his pad. What did the Hegemony Council decide? Standard protocol, Zethkar replied. Humans would be conquest number 48. The Council expected the campaign to last no more than 12 solar days. Admiral Vexton was given command of the Third Fleet, 1,200 ships, veterans of 30 previous conquests. Maria shifted in her seat. Did anyone in the hegemony think humans might be more dangerous than expected? The clicking sound came again from Zethkar's throat. Dangerous. We had fought species with natural armor, thicker than starship hulls. We had conquered races that could survive in hard vacuum without protection. We had defeated civilizations with technology that took us decades to understand. His voice dropped lower, and the translator struggled to keep up. But we had never fought anyone like humans. We did not understand what we were dealing with. What do you mean? Peter asked. Zethkar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his words came slowly, as if each one cost him something. Every species we had conquered before followed the same pattern. They would fight bravely at first, use their best weapons and tactics, but when defeat became certain, they would surrender, or they would retreat to fight another day, or they would negotiate for better terms. This is logical behavior. This is what intelligent beings do when survival is at stake. He looked directly at Maria with 2 of his 4 eyes. The other 2 remained fixed on Peter. Humans do not follow this pattern. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air recycling system. Maria and Peter waited for him to continue. The Third Fleet arrived at the edge of your solar system on what you call March 15th, 2157. We deployed in standard attack formation near the gas giant you call Jupiter. Our sensors showed exactly what we expected to see. A small collection of human ships spread throughout the system, mining vessels near the asteroid belt, cargo haulers moving between your planets, defense platforms around your homeworld. Zethkar's mandibles spread wider, showing rows of sharp teeth. Admiral Vexton opened communications. He offered humanity, the same terms we had offered 47 species before. Surrender unconditionally and become part of the hegemony. Your people would be relocated to suitable worlds. Your resources would be harvested efficiently. Your species would continue to exist under our guidance. And the human response? Maria asked. Your Admiral Lisa Kane replied within minutes. She thanked Admiral Vexton for the offer and declined politely. Then she said something that should have warned us about what was coming. Peter stopped typing. What did she say? Zethkar closed all 4 eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they seemed to glow in the harsh white light. She said, We appreciate you coming all this way to visit, but Earth is not for sale. However, if you're interested in leaving quickly, we'd be happy to help with that. The Ilian commander's voice became even quieter. Admiral Vexton found this amusing. He ordered the fleet to advance and begin standard conquest operations. The human ships did not retreat. They did not form defensive lines. They did not attempt to negotiate for more time. Zethkar leaned forward in his chair, and both humans could see their own reflections in his black eyes. Instead, they turned toward our fleet and accelerated. All of them. Every single human ship in the system began flying directly at us at maximum speed. No evasive maneuvers, no tactical formations. Just a straight-line charge toward 1,200 hegemony warships. Maria felt her throat go dry. That's suicide. Yes, Zethkar said simply. That is what we thought too. Admiral Vexton began, laughing. He ordered the fleet to prepare for target practice. Easy kills against opponents too stupid to run or hide. The commander's translator made a harsh grinding noise. We were wrong about everything. We thought we were hunting prey that had panicked and lost all reason. We discovered we had awakened something far worse than predators. We had found a species that viewed their own deaths as weapons to be aimed at their enemies. The recording device sat silent on the table between them, capturing every word as Zethkar began to tell the story that would change how the galaxy viewed humanity forever.